Hi, this is Kevin Mittge with the Siuslaw Public Library, presenting Part 1 of Beginning Genealogy, or How to Start Researching Your Family History from Home. I'd originally planned to present 3 basic how-to genealogy classes in March and April, but because of the closing of the library, I was not able to do that in person, so I'm going to try to give pretty much the same information in a video format, but I've had to adjust my slides somewhat. I'll break the presentation into short videos, which is intentional because I don't want to overwhelm you with information. And I'll conclude each video with an exercise or task or two to give you something to work on while waiting for the next video to be published. Because we don't have access to Ancestry Library Edition, an online database only available in person at the library, or Ancestry through a paid personal subscription, I'll not be covering Ancestry in any depth, though I will include it when I talk about DNA, and some records examples will be taken from Ancestry in some of the further videos. I'll discuss some other library sources, including print materials, but unfortunately, you're going to have to wait until the library reopens to access those. So genealogy has never been more popular. You've probably seen ads on TV for Ancestry DNA, 23andMe. You've probably seen TV shows such as Who Do You Think You Are and Finding Your Roots with Dr. Henry Louis Gates. So it kind of probably starts making you wonder about your own family history and asking questions such as, where do I come from? Who are my people? What is my ethnicity? What kind of health history does my family have? And how can I pass my family history on to my children and grandchildren? These are all reasons that people may choose to research their family history, and we'll talk about all of them in this class. So first, let's address some common myths about genealogy. One of the most frequently heard one is it's as easy as it looks on TV. Well, sometimes you luck out and find someone else in your family or online who has done the family history. But even if certain lines of your family are researched, I'm sure there are others that have not. And how do you know that these other people's research was even accurate? When those Ancestry ads proclaim leaves on a family tree that will solve your genealogy problem, keep in mind that those are just hints and may or may not be relevant or really even accurate to your own family history. We also hear everything can be found on the internet. There's a great graphic, which I have here on the screen, which shows an iceberg. The small tip above the water represents genealogical information online, and the much larger hidden part under the water represents records which are not available online. This is true. Even with millions of records being digitized and more coming online every day, you may be required to call, email, write, or visit repositories to find the records you need. But Grandma said so. You know, Grandma probably got the gist of the story correct, but the details may have been lost in translation. Over time, as a family story gets repeated from one generation to the next, information is changed, deleted, or added, whether intentionally or not. Another one you hear is all of those records were destroyed. Yes, many records have been destroyed over the years due to fire, natural disasters, wars, you name it. But there are more records available than most people imagine. Just take the example of a burned courthouse during the Civil War. Many times after a new courthouse was built, a call went out for locals to re-record their deeds because proving property ownership was very important when buying and selling land. Perhaps copies of the records were kept at a higher jurisdiction. There are many exceptions to the all the records were destroyed statement. Our family has always spelled our name that way. I've talked to people who are new to research, and if they find a family in the census that really appears to be their family, but the name is spelled wrong, they'll say, well, that can't be my family because my family didn't spell the name that way. You have to understand that name spellings have changed vastly over time. Many of our ancestors were illiterate or barely literate. Census takers and other record keepers wrote down names phonetically. Names varied and changed over time. Which brings us to one of our first rules in genealogy: spelling doesn't count. Look at the variety of ways to spell surnames and first names. Take a simple name like Robbins. Look at all the varieties of ways to spell that name. Look at varieties of how to spell a name like Thomas. A lot of times you'll find first names abbreviated in records. The name William, for example, many times is just listed WM period in records. You need to keep that in mind. There are lots of nicknames. Did you know that Polly is a very common nickname for Mary? And Patsy is a very common nickname for Martha. There's also been changes over time for things like senior and junior. This can refer to older and younger, but not necessarily father and son. So sometimes in an old census or tax record, you might see William Sr. and William Jr., and then William Sr. dies, and all of a sudden Jr. has changed to Senior, and you'll see another William Jr., and that could be a nephew or just a younger member of the family. You just don't know. So you need to keep that in mind when you're looking at records. In the genealogy world, there are some standard ways to record dates and place names. Dates are to be listed as day, month, year. Never ever use slashes to separate numbers. That is totally incorrect and will cause confusion when you are wondering which month or which century a date is supposed to be for. Remember that Europeans order the numbers differently than we do in the US, which is another reason to list dates as day, month, year. Place names should be recorded from smallest jurisdiction to largest. For example, if an event took place here in Florence, you should record it as Florence Lane, Oregon. You don't need to include the country, USA, unless you're working on international genealogy, in which case, yes, you should differentiate between, say, Sweden and Germany and Italy and the UK. County names are imperative. Many of the records that we will be looking for were kept at the county level. These include deeds, marriage records, probate records, you name it. You need to know the county name, period. If you don't know the county for a particular town or city, Google it. Usually the answer will be found on the first result. Our last slide today is a pedigree chart or ancestral chart. This is a chart used to show an individual's direct ancestry, beginning with themselves, then their parents, grandparents, etc. The chart can be extended out indefinitely if you take a person, the great-great-grandparent from the extreme right of the chart, and begin a new pedigree chart with them in the first left-hand position. You can find these charts free online. I usually just Google Ancestry Pedigree Chart to find the free charts that Ancestry makes available to the public to be printed off. You can also go directly to the URL listed in blue at the top of this page. The way this chart works is this. First, use a pencil only, no pens. Begin with yourself in position number 1. Enter your full name, first, middle, and surname, and maiden name if you are a married woman. Enter your birth date in the correct format, day, month, year. Then enter your birthplace in the correct format, such as Florence Lane, Oregon. If you are married, there is a space for that information. Again, if you don't know the county for a particular town or city, Google it. It's easy to find. Next, include the information you know or think you know for your father in position 2. Write his full name, first, middle, and last. Add when he was born, where he was born, marriage date and place, and death date and place if he is deceased. In position 3, you're going to include the information about your mother. Write her full name, but only the maiden name, not the married name. Position 4, you're going to do the same for your grandfather, your father's father. Note that the males are always in the top position in this chart, and the females are on the bottom position. Keep doing this throughout the chart. So below grandfather, you're going to have your father's mother. And then below that, you're going to have your mother's father, and so on. Does this make sense? Hopefully it does. Filling out a pedigree chart is the first exercise I want you to work on. Add information you know and information you think you know, even if you aren't totally sure. So use a pencil. That way you can always come back and make corrections as you get more information. If you don't have access to a printer, then just carefully draw an outline of a pedigree chart in a notebook. This is a working document and doesn't have to look pretty. If you haven't done genealogy before, you might be surprised at the gaps in your knowledge. Don't worry about it. That's what researching your family history is all about, filling in those blanks. The other exercise I want you to do is to list some of the surnames in your family and write down some alternate spellings. Think of a common name like Myers. How many ways are there to spell Myers? Make a list of your family's surnames so when you start researching, you won't forget possible alternatives to check. Okay, I'm going to stop here, fill out a pedigree chart, and make a list of name spelling possibilities. If you need to go back and review some of the things about filling out the pedigree chart, just back the video up a little bit and you should be able to see that. In the next video, I'm going to talk about another form you can use, talk about some genealogy-free software, setting goals for your genealogy, and the first steps you'll take in looking for records and information. Take care and stay safe, everybody.